I will call to order the City of Indianola Council meeting for August 19th, 2024. If we would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the States of America and to stands one nation under justice for all.
Would you call that roll?
Councilmember Richardson?
Present.
Beach? Here. Ray?
Here.
Solms? Present. Armstrong?
Here.
Mayor Erickson?
Present. Moving on to item 3 is public comment. If you are here to speak on something on the agenda, specifically chickens, we will talk about that when we get to that item, that section of the agenda. So right now is just for anybody else who has something they would like to say. You can come to the podium and state your name and address. Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that need to be pulled?
I would ask for claims.
Okay. Anything else?
We also need to pull item
H from the agenda.
And are we gonna come back to that one, or are we pulling it all together?
Yeah, we need to have the Iowa DOT make their approval first in that
Okay.
regard, and so we need to,
Do you want to just suspend that, or do you want to?
if you'd like, you could do a continuance on it, and then it would automatically go to the next one.
Okay,
Probably the best thing, just do site from.
okay. All right, well, when we get back to that, so can I get a motion to approve item, or the consent agenda with the exceptions of B and H? Second. Thank you. Ben, do you wanna give us a quick recap on here?
Sure, we're setting a couple of public hearings on 2 different projects that will take place on September the 16th, West Clinton Avenue Pavement Improvement Project, as well as the North End Street Storm Sewer Repair Project. We have some liquor licenses that we're approving and several pay applications for different projects that we have going on around town. West Clinton Avenue Culvert Project, South State Street Project, Project. Down elsewhere, construction project as well. We're also approving a pay application for the Vanderpool Franklin Sanitary Sewer Project. And doing first consideration of an ordinance amending city code, deleting chapter 30 of the Downtown Square Commission with a new Iowa Main Street designation for our city. We're consolidating and our efforts behind that new program, the Downtown Square Commission. We have resolution suspending enforcement alcohol for at West Salem, West Hills for Oktoberfest event. We have a resolution awarding a contract to the Veterans Memorial Aquatic Center pool painting project. And resolution approving lot tie agreement at 60 East, or 60 feet of outlet, 63. Joining former alley there. Considering approval of a home-based Iowa incentive application and a resolution authorizing liens to the Warren County Treasurer for purposes of assessing costs for nuisance.
Any questions?
Ben, do you know on the East Franklin project, and I'm actually okay with that change order, I know that'll make everybody faint, but because of the utilities, we're so close to the service on that, do we know, are we planning to have a process in place by which we will have that electronically available and all that information so that in the future as they probably go ahead and finish the rest of East Franklin, whether it's all the way to North 6th Street Place or whatever the case is, that we know the locations of those particular utilities? So
It's
we
my
don't.
understanding, and I'm going to defer a little bit to Ian and Dave back there, that when we do have the ground opened up, we do take GPS locations of the utilities out there so we know where they are. We have an as-built going forward after the ground is opened up so we don't have these issues again in the future.
I assume we didn't have as-built in for that particular area.
It's that older part
Probably
of
not
town,
that
we did
whole
not.
development over there, yeah. Thank you, I appreciate that.
In regards to all these projects, are we pretty much on time? I know we had a lot of rain, that's kind of delayed some things.
We had record rain and it did impact many of our projects. I think the one that's the most impacted is likely going to be Hillcrest.
Okay.
And with Hillcrest, the real concern is whether or not we open up that very last phase this construction season and potentially run into winter. Or if we hold off on that last phase until spring of the following year, just to ensure that we don't have a winter kind of issue in trying to plow over gravel and whatnot. So we'll make that determination as we get further along. I don't know if there's any impacts to other projects.
The third wettest May in history and the wettest July since 1993 is some delays on all the construction.
I imagine. Our grass is all green though. Is everybody's grass green? Doesn't usually happen, so, all right, well, perfect, thank you. Is there any other questions? Jackie?
Councilmember Richardson,
Aye.
Beach,
Aye.
Brave,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Stones,
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
Circling back, item B, can I get a motion to, for approval of claims?
So moved.
Any questions?
Councilmember Richardson,
Abstain.
Beach,
Aye.
Brave,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Stones, Armstrong.
Aye.
And then item H,
I make a motion on that, that you continue that till the next council meeting, is that what we're looking at?
perfect, is there a second on that?
So moved.
Jackie?
Councilmember Beach,
Aye.
Brave,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Stones, Armstrong,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Right, item 6, council reports, are there any reports this evening?
I would like to, Ben and I met with, Tiffany Tauschek, Stacy Levan and Alex. And Alex from the Des Moines Partnership, on Friday. I had requested they come down and meet with us after the partnership trip in May, and that was the first time we could really all get together and talk about some different things. Kind of some exciting news that, they got back to us on a project that's a potential project, and I know Ben had some information on that as well that I know that's not really ready to share. But basically it came down to the fact that the more we engage, the more we're gonna get back out of that. So on Friday, October, whatever that date is, and Friday, the
I
first
believe it's
Friday.
October 3rd and it's Alex Lynch.
Thank you. October 3rd, they're actually having a legislative policy committee meeting, and I would encourage at least another member or two to go if you have time to do that. I don't know the times on that yet. They haven't gotten that back to us, but that will be where we actually set some times and things that we want to have when we go to DC next year, and also what we do legislatively in the state this year. The focus this time came around on a lot on the taxes and what the legislature's been doing to us, and kind of seemed like it was a little bit of they hadn't fully gathered all of that information, but that's something that we need to make sure that they understand at the partnership. What Ms. Tauschek did mention was the fact that they're trying to make it and understand what's happening to smaller cities and counties around the Des Moines area that they represent. And so the issues of House File 718 and Senate File 2345, I think it does really affect small towns and how it's really difficult on them as well. So not only us, but small towns as well. So I saw it as a positive meeting, and I think it was very well received. We just need to be more engaged.
Steve, when you get those times, can you let me know?
I will, absolutely, Steve.
Downtown Des Moines?
It will be probably at their office downtown, which is what, 700 Locust or something like that.
Other reports? Moving on to item 7, mayor's report. Not much since we've met last time, and actually there has been a lot. We were given our Main Street designation in early August, and Councilmember Richardson, Stones, and Ben, myself, Emily, and a few others went over to Cedar Rapids to receive that award, and so that was very exciting, and big thing is happening for our downtown. So we're very excited, and thank you to all the staff, especially Emily and Charlie. He's not here, but special thanks to Charlie for all the help on that. That was many years in the making. All right, we will move on to public consideration under old business. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ron had asked me just to mention a couple things about what that does for us.
The Main Street program?
Main Street, yeah. And I sat through a few sessions a few, throughout the day and a half. I think the biggest thing for us is economically, it opens up grants and funding that we didn't have access to before as the downtown square. It also gives us an executive director for downtown, and that person will focus exclusively on the downtown square, whereas the chamber is split amongst all chamber members.
I kind of consider it like a bullseye. You have the center, which is now the downtown that the new downtown director would be focused on, the chambers that next ring in that bullseye, the Warren County Economic Development is that next ring all the way through, so as we can focus our efforts on revitalizing our entire community.
And the funding is privately raised among businesses here in town that made commitments for, was it 5-year commitment we asked for? 3-year commitment of businesses in town, so they are supporting this and
Funding the
funding,
director.
yes, the director position. It's about 250,000, am I correct?
About a little over 120.
Well, I was way off, don't I?
Did have a comment on that about how much tax dollars were involved in that. There's absolutely not involved in the whole process. In fact, the great thing about it is it reaps benefits far beyond anything that we have tax dollar wise. A couple of sessions that I know Melissa attended and I attended as well, and Ben talked about the return on investment, and we always talk about this on the council the last year or so. We talked about what's going to be our return on investment. Well, we don't have an investment in this. However, local businesses have an investment in this. We have time investment.
We do have an investment into that, both in staff time and in office space, as well as on a contribution of hotel motel tax dollars that helps to fund.
Right.
So there is
So
some.
that's simply what we give to a lot of different organizations as well. It's just not Main Street, Iowa. I mean, we give it to the county fair, we give it to the Blends, we give it to a lot of different people as well. And that's where that money has to be spent for local option sales tax. But what I will tell you is this, though, that everything that I was heard at that, of all the different presenters from all the different Main Street Iowas, return on investment is easily tenfold, if not more in most of those cases. And it's just amazing to hear all the things. And the other thing I think people don't understand is that for small businesses, especially those in the Main Street area, I mean, they can have somebody come in and show them, if they have questions about is my business set up properly, they'll come in and they'll look at your business and they'll give you ideas about how to make your business better, not only how to run your business better, but how to maybe set your business up. And I'll do all of those things in addition to all the architectural services that are basically provided free of charge. So there's a lot of good things in it.
Yes. Any other questions about Main Street? It's very exciting. It's very exciting. So, moving on to old business, under the Twin Creeks rezoning request. I need a motion to open the public hearing regarding an ordinance rezoning property from R1 Single Family Residential Detached Zoning District and the R2 Single Family Residential Attached Zoning District from A1 Agricultural Open Space Zoning District for property located in the north half of the southwest quarter of Section 13, Township 26 North, Range 24, west of 5th PM, Warren County, Iowa.
So moved.
Thank you. Jackie?
Councilmember Beach,
Aye.
Graves,
Aye.
Selby,
Aye.
Stones,
Aye.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Right, we are now in the public hearing. I will turn it over to Emily.
Daniels has submitted a rezoning application for the aforementioned parcels. There will be a map that shows where that location is. The request shows there is a subdivision request that goes along with this, but that will be heard at the third consideration of the rezoning request. But today we're just focusing on the rezoning. The request for the rezoning is to rezone from A1 Agricultural Open Space Zoning District to the R1 and R2 Single Family Residential Attached and Detached Zoning District. This shows the padding portion. So in the future, when this comes through, they're showing 5 developable lots for residential development. 3 outlots are also shown that would be reserved for future development. And this would entail like the entirety of that area to be rezoned. This shows the future land use map on the left. there is a mapping error on this map where it currently shows parks and recreation within that area. It should show medium, high density residential for this area. The right shows the current zoning for the area, which is the A1 agricultural zoning district. Surrounding land uses and zoning to the south is planned unit development with multifamily townhouse development, and then to the east there are single family dwellings on larger acreages. To the north is undeveloped as well as the west, which has the Corver treatment. So the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the request, and if there's any questions for staff, we would be happy to answer that.
Emily, on that outlot X and Y, would that have to be accessed from the south? If we're putting those lots there on the north?
So the outlots would be more so, they would have to come back with a new subdivision plat in order for those to be redeveloped and putting in accesses, streets, etc. The new lots that would be considered developable are lots 1 through 5, and that would be shown along West Cheever Street.
If we're putting those lots there on the north, so like it's the only way to develop those southern outlots would be from the south then, right? Coming in from
Yeah, they would
those
have access.
townhomes?
Yeah, they would have access through the south, eventually with that road connection, but they will still have access along West Hoover Street too, so street can go in. And maybe understanding, like in planning and zoning, it does look a little bit confusing when you look at the plat, but that area to, on outlot Z, consists of, look at it, it's 600 feet there. So it looks very small, proportionally on the plat, but there is 600 feet that's being accounted for.
Thank you.
Ron, during that, I had some conversations with the owner on this particular property, and I sat in with Charlie on 1 or 2 of those meetings, and that was the intent all along, was that there would be access on Hoover one way or the other and go through that, but the outlots have to be developed too. They have to be brought back through planning and zoning. This is again just to change the zoning from A1 to R2, 1-2. But those outlots and everything will have to be developed and have to be planted all together, and then there'll be a road. That's the intent.
Questions? Can I get a motion to, well, first off, is there anyone here in the audience that wants to speak on this development? Not a better shot. All right, can I get a motion to close the public hearing? Jackie?
Councilmember Solms?
Aye.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Richardson?
Aye.
Beach? Aye. Ray?
Aye.
Selby?
Aye.
Alright, so now can I get a first and second motion on the first consideration of an ordinance rezoning property from R1 single family residential detached zoning district and R2 single family residential attached zoning district from the A1 agricultural open space zoning district for property located in the north half, the southwest quarter of section 13, township 76 north, range 24 west, 5th PM, Warren County, Iowa.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Jackie.
Councilmember Beach? Aye. Ray?
Aye.
Selby?
Aye.
Solms?
Aye.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Richardson?
Aye.
All right, we are now going to move on to our public hearing, but I want to give a little bit of how we're gonna do this. So we will make a motion to open our public hearing. We'll take a vote on that. Staff will present to us, and then I have some forms. If you haven't filled out a form yet, please grab one from out there, and then I will call you in the order of the forms to come to the podium to speak. And we'll hear everyone out, and I'll do that. That's the rules when we get there, so, all right. So can I get a first and second motion to open the public hearing regarding an ordinance amending the city code of the city of Indianola, Iowa by adding regulations for the keeping of urban chickens within city limits?
So moved.
Thank you, Jackie.
Councilmember Ray?
Aye.
Dolby,
Aye.
Stones,
Aye.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Beach.
All right, we are now in the public hearing. Kristen and Emily, you gonna present to us? Which I'm going to text you a spreadsheet that they gave us.
Okay.
Just got under that box there.
I can just grab my own. Read off of that.
Did you print these, Christina?
That's so plain.
Just use my own laptop if that's easier to read off of.
No, I didn't know if you wanted me to read them all.
It's too tight this way. Let's do this. Give me a second.
We only have 5,500 people. Thank you, Jason.
So talking about the proposed urban chicken ordinance. So the Community Development Department brought forth and presented the proposed urban chicken ordinance to the Planning and Zoning Commission on June 25th, which was sent back to staff for additional review, addition of amendments, and to allow for more community feedback. The amended ordinance and additional research information was brought back to the Planning and Zoning Commission on July 9th. Following that June 25th Planning and Zoning meeting, storage requirements and the decommissioning process were both additions made to the proposed ordinance at the July 9th Planning and Zoning meeting. There was consideration of requiring chicken permit applicants to provide notice of their intent to have chickens on their property to all adjacent neighbors, but that addition was ultimately removed at the July 9th meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission made a recommendation for City Council to approve the ordinance with a vote of 4-3. This proposed ordinance would allow urban chickens within the city limits in all residential zoning districts as long as the specific requirements were met. This included permit requirements, closure requirements, land separation requirements, design criteria, and other regulations that I'll talk about. So first, I want to talk about this community survey that was hosted. It was made on June 3rd and was shared through the City of Indianola's official website, along with social media channels, including Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. The image above shows that the post from June 3rd to June 20th reached over 15,000 Facebook accounts, made roughly 17,000 Facebook impressions, and has received over 1,000 clicks, directing users to the city website regarding the chicken ordinance. With each update, roughly 3,000 to 5,000 accounts were reached, showing that a large population of residents were alerted to the ongoing process of the potential adoption of this urban chicken ordinance. The graph on the bottom of the screen shows the analytics from the survey that shows how many responses we received since the survey was published. So as you can see, there was a huge spike in responses the first couple days that the survey was open, and then we only received a few comments here and there throughout the remainder of the survey, which was closed on July 21st. In addition to the city website and social media accounts, the public was initially informed through the Indianola Independent Advocate and the City of Indianola Community Update. At the previous planning and zoning meetings, there were a few comments regarding increasing awareness and accessibility to the survey. To address these comments, staff also included the information about the survey on the June 2024 Indianola Municipal Utility Statements, which would have been received around July 1st. In the end, the final survey results included just over 1,200 responses, and 1,125 of those responses were specifically from participants who are residents of the City of Indianola. So the survey asked about perceived benefits, potential challenges, and overall thoughts of the proposed chicken ordinance. The survey was created to gain community feedback and to tailor parts of the ordinance to the wants of the community. To keep in mind, though, that this survey was just a piece of the decision-making process, it helps staff and board members know what the community's perspectives are on this topic. So some of the results that we received from this survey is that 61.6% of residents who took the survey believe that urban chickens could bring some sort of benefit to the community. A majority of residents who took the survey strongly agreed that urban chickens provided the perceived benefits listed on the screen, but at the same time, many residents were very concerned with possible challenges that are shown on the screen as well. Negative impacts on property values and excessive noise were the two main concerns that were shown in the survey, with about 54% of survey participants indicating at least some level of concern about it. So based off of the results of the survey and the residents who took it, overall there is a general support for implementing the chicken ordinance, but there are still concerns that need to be recognized. So the goal of this ordinance is to address those concerns by creating regulations and requirements that will help prevent any future issues and nuisances that can arise in the future. So according to the final results of this survey, a little over 60% of residents who took the survey are in support of having the urban chicken ordinance implemented in Indianola. And even though about 60% of residents support the urban chicken ordinance, only 43.8% are actually interested in owning, raising, and caring for chickens on their own property. So these pie charts show that there are residents who support the ordinance, even though they themselves don't want to have chickens. So in addition to hearing resident feedback, staff also looked at other Iowa municipalities' feedback and their specific ordinances. So during our research, we looked at urban chicken ordinances in Iowa municipalities that shared similar characteristics to Indianola. Out of the 20 cities that staff looked at, 15 of them allowed for the keeping of urban chickens within city limits. Staff then reached out to the 15 cities who allowed urban chickens, and we wanted to receive their feedback on how their city's ordinance is going. And out of those 15 cities, 9 of them responded. And so this chart that is on the screen shows when these cities adopted their ordinance, how many active permits they currently have, and their population as of 2023, just to understand the ratio of households to current permits. So when reaching out to these 15 cities who allow for urban chickens, I received a lot of comments from their staff representatives, many of which were positive, but some of them were negative or recommendations for what they wish their city would have done. When reaching out, we specifically asked what issues their cities have seen with the implementation of the urban chicken ordinance, and most of the responses said that they had almost no issues. The main issue that these cities faced was the occasional loose chicken who escaped from their enclosures. Multiple cities actually expressed their surprise with the lack of complaints, as they were initially doubtful of the success of the ordinance when it was first adopted. And then I do just want to address the fourth comment on the screen, which is talking about the noise complaints that the city of Osceola has received due to roosters, which this comment further backs staff's proposed ordinance's prohibition of roosters in the city if this ordinance were to be passed. So going on to some of the requirements of the permit that we have in the ordinance. So the first is the permitting process. So any resident who is interested in owning and caring for urban chickens, they must apply for an urban chicken permit and go through the permitting process. The permit requirements are shown on the screen. And the chart on the right further shows that having a permitting process is common among cities in Iowa that allow urban chickens within their city, showing that out of the 15 cities who allow urban chickens, 13 of them require a permit. The purpose of requiring an urban chicken permit is to also ensure that people follow the regulations and requirements that will be stated in this presentation and in the ordinance, and also to help prevent any nuisance or issues that occur in the future. So first is talking about some enclosure requirements. So I want to provide some clarification first. I'm gonna be talking about chicken runs and then hen houses and chicken tractors. So a chicken run is a completely enclosed / fenced in area, while a hen house or chicken tractor would be the structure inside the chicken run. So what you would picture when I say a chicken coop, so you can see both of those in that image. The only thing, though, that's not correct about that image is that chickens must be in the chicken run at all times, so that chicken on the outside would not be there. But the requirements for both the chicken runs and the hen houses and chicken tractors are shown again on the screen. Most importantly that I want to point out is that, again, all chickens must be in the chicken run 24/7. So even if a property has a fenced-in backyard, there still must be a fully enclosed chicken run and a hen house / chicken tractor. Then there are also specific sizing requirements. So the hen houses / chicken tractors must be a minimum of 4 square feet per chicken. And that's just a common size that's deemed to be healthy and safe for chickens. And then the maximum chicken run size is 120 square feet. These requirements are similarly aligned with the cities in Iowa that were included in our research, and they also ensure that the chickens are kept in a safe and appropriate enclosure. And then it also helps reduce potential conflicts and nuisances that may arise in the future. There are some separation requirements as well, including that the enclosure must be located in the rear yard. It must be 10 feet from property lines and then 25 feet from any adjacent buildings and dwellings. Some design criteria, just to make sure the enclosures look nice and ensure the health and safety of the chickens, is that the materials must be uniform for the entire structure. The windows and vents must be covered in predator and bird-proof wire of less than 1-inch openings, and then the hen house and chicken tractor must be well maintained. So some other little requirements that we have, these are all pretty universal requirements across cities in Iowa who allow for urban chickens. It includes the prohibition of roosters, prohibition of slaughtering of chickens, does not allow for chickens to run at large, and ensures that chickens will be in a clean and safe environment with appropriate access to food and clean water. And then we also added in a decommissioning process so that in the case that residents no longer want to continue with the permit application process or no longer want to keep chickens on their property, they now must go through this procedure. So this procedure ensures that the chicken enclosure is completely dismantled and the site is restored appropriately so that there are no abandoned chicken facilities or chickens remaining on properties. In the event that any terms or requirements within this ordinance are violated, the Community Development Department may issue an order requiring the violations, issue an order requiring the property owner to correct violations within a reasonable amount of time through code enforcement. The community service officer may also issue tickets for the neglect or abuse of any urban chickens, and these violations can occur due to health concerns and/or interference of neighbor enjoyment of their property. Is the owner's responsibility to prevent any nuisances caused by their chickens. And then any variances and appeals regarding minimum requirements for urban chicken keeping may be reviewed by the Board of Adjustment. And then to further ensure the appropriate measures will be taken for code enforcement due to ordinance violations, staff had a previous meeting with the Indianola Code Enforcement Officer and the Indianola Community Service Officer to discuss what this process would look like. And it was decided that all complaints and code violations would be received by both personnel, and then one of them would handle the complaint based off of whether the complaint is a nuisance-based offense or if it is a negligence-based offense. Then the violation itself and the severity or the consistency of the violations and the judgment of the personnel handling the complaint will decide the course of action taken to resolve this issue. Permits may be revoked if the violation is not corrected within a reasonable amount of time, and the chickens in enclosure may need to be removed from the property. And then in the case of extreme neglect or abuse, the permit can be revoked and the chickens in enclosure may be removed from the property. Partnerships with the Iowa Farm Sanctuary and potentially the ARL will aid in the permanent rehoming of chickens if removal is needed. And then finally, if this ordinance is approved, staff wanted to ensure that there are resources regarding urban chickens available for all residents. So first, the Iowa State Extension and Outreach has an online education course on urban chickens and has also expressed willingness to host in-person workshops for Indianola residents if that is something of interest in the future. And then the ARL and Iowa Farm Sanctuary are two possible organizations who are willing and able to assist in the rehoming of any neglected or abused chickens as well. So again, these resources are available to help ensure that residents who are interested in owning urban chickens are well educated and prepared. And then are there any questions from you guys?
I'm just gonna,
For Kristen?
Kristen. I know I emailed a question that you've responded to, and I just wanted to clarify for the public regarding waste and that storage. So, what I asked was, the storage of the waste, is it going to be built into the COOP requirements? Or is that storage of waste gonna be moved around? So where somebody could maybe take that waste, put it next to the back corner of their fenced in backyard or the neighbor's yard. So I just wanted to ask it publicly so everybody could get that answer.
Of course. So in the permit application process, it requires that the applicant has to have the plans and design for their waste storage, so where it will be located and what it will be stored in. So to enable to receive the permit, they have to do the proper waste storage plans for it. And then if they don't go with the plan that they submitted, code enforcement can be alerted to that through any complaints or anything, and then the code enforcement officer will take.
We know if any of these communities have fencing requirements for like a privacy fence so that the neighbors don't have to see someone's chicken tractor run thing?
I didn't ask them about that, so I'm not sure at the moment if they do have privacy.
But just so the public's aware, we do not have a regulation that's going to make a privacy fence.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So it would just be the chicken run enclosure, but there's no need to have a property fence or privacy fence.
And if I read the ordinance correctly, it does not allow sale of eggs, is that correct?
Correct.
A couple questions. I sent them to you, but I just want to ask them publicly as well. Can you talk about the purpose of banding of chickens, the leg banding?
Yeah, so we wanted to do that just in case any chickens do get loose, and that there's a complaint made, that the code enforcement officer or the community service officer, they can go retrieve the chicken, and the band would have the permit number so that they are able to track whose chicken it is and return it to them, and also they could get a citation for that as well. So it's just to make sure that we know whose chickens are whose, basically.
Thank you. And also, as for the enforcement, you talked about who's going to be doing what. And you've defined, like, the nuisance part will be
Yep.
one department and the other one. And as far as ARL's concerned, we've already talked to them and they are okay with taking chickens from Indianola.
The ARL is in the works. The Iowa Farm Sanctuary for sure said that they would be willing to take any hens. The ARL, I've reached out to them multiple times and was told that the legal department would call me back, and they have not yet. But that's something we're still working on. But the city of Des Moines has a partnership with their urban chicken ordinance. And so when I reached out to the city of Des Moines, they actually recommended the ARL. So I feel like that is a good possibility once they actually get in contact with the property.
But we have one place for sure.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So what's gonna happen when someone calls in and says their neighbor has a rooster? Because it's gonna happen.
Then that would be against the ordinance and they would need to rehome the rooster.
So if we're gonna place it upon the homeowner to relocate that rooster then? And what if they don't?
Then that would be something that the code enforcement officer or the community service officer would have to deal with, and they would have to remove it from the property.
And we're gonna do what with it?
Take it to the Iowa Farm Sanctuary or.
I thought they only took hens.
Oh, sorry, yeah. We would take it to the ARL, with that part, if we can get that partnership with the ARL, they do take roosters.
There's no fee schedule in the ordinance, is that correct?
Oh, we haven't like the fee schedule, so that would have to be updated depending on council's.
Does this ordinance allow for on-site inspection by any one of the officers, whether it's through initial application, whether it's the annual renewal, or during complaint?
Yeah, I mean, we would still, so through the permitting process, we would have to do an on-site inspection before they bring in the chickens of the enclosure. The way that the code is written, they would have to get that renewed on a biannual basis, so that would require additional inspection every. So it would require that to continue as far as if they do want to renew their permits.
And on complaints, does it allow for inspections as well?
Does it allow for what?
Inspections, if there's a complaint filed, does it allow for inspections?
The issue that we have today is someone may file a complaint, but and if that property owner has, say, a privacy fence, there's no way of really proving that the person has chickens unless that homeowner allows them in. Is that what you're getting at, Steve?
That's on-site inspection, correct?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, we're the same as a rental registration process. Is when we get complaints on a rental, we go out and we inspect that complaint. So if they have an active chicken permit, and there was a complaint on it, they weren't taking care of their chickens, we can go out and inspect it that way.
Is that actively part of this ordinance as we're reading it? I mean, does it actually spell that out? Because I was reading this and I did not. I don't see that in here. And I don't necessarily see. I mean, that would be a typical of what we do normally, but I don't think it's specifically in this ordinance, and I would hate to have a challenge and not be able to do that. So how do we handle, so you've already explained how we handle a single complaint. At what point does that move into reconsideration of the application for having urban chickens? And how's that spelled out in the ordinance?
You mean by case basis, like if a singular resident, how do we decide
Let's
when
say
they're
you
done?
have one complaint, I get that, you know, one time, maybe two times, but how many, is there a point at which time in that ordinance it says that after X number of complaints that we are actually going to request removal of the chickens?
It would just be up to the personnel handling it.
So it's a judgment issue then,
And citations.
right?
I mean, it would have to be a founded complaint,
Right.
just because somebody complained.
Oh, granted, absolutely.
And in item 7 under the ordinance, it kind of goes through, they may suspend, deny, revoke, decline, permits, kind of step through their failure to correct deficiencies, failure to pay, false statements.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Kristen? Okay. Thank you so much. We will move into the public comment now. I will call each speaker up in the order that we received your form. Each speaker shall stand at the podium, clearly state your name and your address for the record. All remarks should be directed to the council, city council. Speakers are not allowed to permit or engage in dialogue with the audience. We ask citizens to keep their comments limited to 3 minutes. And please refrain from repeating previous comments. Simply note if you agree or disagree with that comment. Individuals may not speak more than once, and please be respectful and courteous of all opinions that are expressed. And once the public hearing has closed, no further comments from the public will be allowed. The council will then consider the ordinance and engage in a discussion among ourselves. At that point, we may ask staff some additional questions, but we will ask the audience to please not engage in that. And then a vote will be taken on the proposed ordinance. If the ordinance passes, it will need to be considered 2 more times by the council on September 3rd as well as on September 16th before it would become final if it passes. All right, our first speaker is Patty Alexander.
Hi, thanks for letting me talk. My name is Patty Alexander and I live on 8626 110th Avenue. And I'm here to just inform you about the pros and cons of chickens. I've been a hobby chicken farmer for 13 years. We have 9 hens and 4 roosters, all right? So the pros, I just want to say that I believe in the freedom to grow your own food and to own chickens, so I believe in that freedom. The pros are that kids can learn a lot from chickens. They can observe them and see how curious they are, and they can watch them grow and they can see them hatch. And so kids can learn that appreciation of the hard work that goes into growing your own food. The chickens also eat bugs, and you can also give chickens garden scraps. So those are all pros. But the negatives and the cons are that they're not lucrative. We spend about $50 a month to feed our chickens. So that, and we get 2 eggs per day on the average. So that's almost $1 per egg that we are spending on the chickens. So also, when you buy chickens, you have to buy 5 in from like Tyson's, and they say that if you buy 5, they do better as a flock. And so you buy them as a little chick, and you can't tell if they're roosters until they're 2 months old, almost 3 months old. And you don't know if they're roosters unless you can identify it and you learn that. But what are you gonna do if they do have roosters? You know, are they, the city of Ocean Springs in Mississippi has a lot of, they allow roosters and chickens, and they have a lot of feral roosters. So, there's, like I said, you have to buy a 5 chick minimum, and chicks take a heat lamp to keep them healthy and warm, and that's a fire hazard. In fact, a home in Urbandale had a house fire because they had the heat lamp on the chicks, and it burned down their house. So dogs love chickens, dogs eat chickens, opossums eat chickens, raccoons eat chickens. Even though that chicken wire is animal proof, somehow they get in. We've lost chickens to possums, almost lost chickens to dogs, and lost chickens to raccoons. So you've got lots of regulations, and so you really thought about all the details about the regulations. However, there's people that don't even follow the rules of dogs. I was walking down the street the other day, and a dog was loose in their yard, and I about got my jugular vein torn in two because the dog came out from behind the bush and almost attacked me. So good thing I screamed, and I think I scared the dog. But chickens poop a lot. Oh, and I was gonna say that they poop a lot and very often and unpredictably. And I know you've talked about waste storage, but chicken poop a lot, and chickens don't make good pets. They don't wag their tail or purr, so they don't make good pets. So thank you for allowing me to talk.
Thank you. Right. The next one is Joe Moody. I debated whether I should let Barbara go first or you. You must have turned yours in first, so.
Around, I think I'm probably the oldest one here, so I'm not gonna say anything that provokes a fight because I get whipped. Anyway,
Protect you, Joe.
thank you, Jim. But he's talking about something that I'm not talking about. But my main concern is you all are city council, you are our Supreme Court. There's absolutely no positive long-term benefits of having chickens in town. Long-term benefits. There are a lot of benefits that will become issues in the future. The chicken coops start looking bad, i.e. so forth and so on. Why, as a city council, you people are responsible for our neighborhood, you're responsible for our citizens. I'll listen to the commentary, I'll listen to everything that's been said, and it's issue after issue after concern after concern after issue after concern. Why would a city council vote to promote issues that become issues later on? Maybe not tomorrow, but they will become down the future. What you vote on today will be your legacy. Think about that, please.
Thanks, Jeff. All right. Barbara Moody.
I'm Barbara Moody. I live at 908 Angela Drive. We were all present a few weeks ago when I handed out the brochure from the CDC concerning backyard chickens and health risks. So tonight I would also quote from an issue of CNN Health dated January 19th, 2023. The title was "A Warning from Health Experts Concerning Backyard Chickens." Quote, "Salmonella bacteria can live on chickens' beaks, feathers, or feet. From there, it will spread to persons' hands, clothes, and shoes. Backyard flocks have caused several multi-state salmonella outbreaks. Just over the past year, backyard flocks have been connected to more than 1,200 people getting sick with salmonella. Actually, this number should be much higher because many cases are unreported to the CDC. Salmonella is extremely serious and can easily spread from person to person. I believe many people who support having chickens in town are unaware of the health risks that we have. If you watch the local news, you've seen the Des Moines City Council have been discussing more restrictions on their chickens and backyard chickens because of the complaints from residents. That council had to endure protests, mostly from chicken owners who object to more regulations. If Indianola passes this ordinance, it will be the same. It will not be one and done. It will not go away. There will be constant requests, more restrictions, and more chicken owners will refuse to comply. Besides dealing with complaints about noise, odor, insects, rodents, and predators, I'm still wondering about the waste management. It can be 10 feet from my property line. What is the proper waste storage? I know it was touched on, but I never did hear what you're supposed to do with the chicken poop. I'm not sure. I know people have good intentions, but I live in a real world where good intentions don't equal good results. Planning and zoning has put in place many rules for people wanting backyard chickens, which we appreciate. But even if all those rules are followed, there will always be the noise and the odor and more complaints from neighbors. Frankly, I would never buy property if there were backyard chickens on that block. Last time I mentioned code enforcement, I'll skip through it, but with all the regulations, I do not understand how we as a city can comply with the complaints that we're going to be getting without hiring more code enforcement people. We've all received our tax estimates for this year. Everybody I know has had a big increase. If we have to hire more personnel to accommodate these chicken people, I think the taxpayers will not be happy about it.
Thank you. All right. Jim, Berkeley. We're just going right down the row. I guess.
Yeah. You'll hurt me. I love you, Joe. Jim Berkeley, 1007 South G Street. Now, I will start off by first saying, Kristen, great presentation, very well thought out. I don't like all of the federal or state government oversight. I think it's a little stringent, but I'm willing to comply with some of that in order to have the ability to own chickens. Now, I will say, my wife and I live on almost 9 acres in the city limits of Indianola here. So we're a unique setup. So I understand, as my good friend Joe and his lovely wife Barb had pointed out, you know, their concern as property owners, having somebody next door to them that has a chicken coop that does not take care of it. But I would like to also argue that the same could go for people that have backyard dog kennels or other things that they collect in their properties, you know, cars,
broken down furniture, things like that I've seen as I drive throughout the city in different places. So the benefits of owning chickens as a property owner, and after we dealt with COVID back in 20, and we saw a lot of self-sustaining folks start looking at, hey, we need to start thinking about taking care of ourselves, because let's face it, folks, things are getting harder and harder, and we're not always going to have grocery stores. We're not always going to have the things that we have like we have them now. So having the ability to have a few chickens, I think, is helpful. It's beneficial. It does teach education to kids and things like that, as far as watching and taking care of animals, having 4-H opportunities for them to develop structure and understanding and a love for animals, versus spending all of their time sitting in their rooms playing on video games. I do understand, as a healthcare professional, I've been a nurse for 33 years. Chickens do carry salmonella. So do a lot of other things. Raw chicken, if you don't handle it properly, could give you salmonella. The thing is, if you don't wash your hands with anything that has potential bacteria, you're going to run the risk of having infections. I think a lot of it comes down to, again, having responsible folks being able to show that they are willing to take on, because it is a lot of work, and it can be a lot of work. You know, I've had chickens before, and it can take a lot of time. But I will say that I am in support of having chickens in the city. Again, unique situation that we have with having the, but I just want to voice to the council that I am supportive of work. Most part. I always have to have some objection. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on, we have Nicole Duncan Lutheran.
Hi, I'm Nicole Duncan Lutheran. I live at 306 North 17th Street. And I am in support of allowing urban chickens in Indianola. I think I've emailed the council now a couple times, but being able to be somewhat self-sustaining is something that really appeals to myself and my family, in addition to the educational benefits that this would bring for our 3 young kids. I'm also really, the more I research and learn, discovering that chickens are fantastic pest control. They eat thousands of different insects, which means we don't have to use pesticides, which end up in our drinking water. You know, those are all things that are very appealing to me. But one of the most interesting things that I've recently discovered is that chickens, depending on the ratio of layer feed to organic compost material, so for like fruit and vegetable scraps, you don't want to feed them too much bread, pasta, etc., because that can be unhealthy for them, just like it can be for us. But chickens can go through hundreds of pounds of what would otherwise be going to a landfill every year. And I'm not talking about large numbers of chickens. I'm talking about 4 chickens can make a significant difference in what we're sending to the landfill, which food waste is by far and away the largest amount of matter going into our landfills. So, you know, from a sustainability and just a standpoint of you know, being a little more eco-minded, I think this is something that is really a good thing. You know, no one's looking, one of the other speakers talked about, they kind of factored in it's about $1 per egg. No one is looking at this as this is gonna, you know, reduce my grocery bill in half. That's not realistic once you think about the materials and time and money invested in, you know, building a coop, the chicken run, et cetera, buying the feed, buying the chickens. I know you can get them through different farm and fleet type stores, but you can also get chickens that are not young chicks from other chicken farmers, so that you don't have that issue of, is this a hen, is this a rooster? So, there are lots of ways to mitigate that. I do appreciate the work that the staff did and the Planning and Zoning Committee. I feel like they've been very mindful in the ordinance and the proposal that they brought together, especially in respect to the smell, the noise complaints. My husband did reach out to almost 20 communities, and in all of those, there were virtually no complaints, which matched up with the facts that were shown on the presentation earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Chris Lutheran.
My name is Chris Lutheran. I live at 306 North 17th Street. I'm the one that put together the spreadsheet. You did a phenomenal job with your presentation. I only wish we would have worked together because it seems like we got a lot of overlap there. And yeah, I just want to highlight a few things about the smell complaints. I mean, all across the board, there were 0 complaints, and the only noise complaints were from roosters. Once again, we're going to mitigate that if this is approved. And the other thing is just the rule of averages or law of averages for the population and number of permits and chickens. So saying that we should have 15, 16 homes in the Indianola community on average that should actually have chickens. If this comes out, another thing, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I mean, what my wife was saying too about most people that have permits are gonna have to own the property, be the homeowner, so they're gonna pay a mortgage. They're gonna pay a couple $100 for a coop. They're gonna, I mean, they have all this money invested. They're not gonna do all this just to devalue their property and turn it into some slum. So I think that's just one of the other things that we need to think about on. That's all I got.
Thank you. The next one is Anna Smith.
Hello, I'm Anna Smith. I'm at 703 North Howard. Steve, thanks for responding to me. I sent an email to all of you just kind of outlining kind of my opinion on this. The main complaints that I've seen are bad smells, noise. It can look bad in our yards, that kind of thing. If we are already keeping everything in the backyard, there shouldn't be as big of an issue. The smells, we've had just as much from if we've got people who aren't cleaning up after their dogs, if we've got fertilizer going on in the surrounding fields. And the most irritating complaint that I hear is about the noise. Whenever we live close enough to the racetrack where it's booming and cars racing by, and then maybe a block or two away from me, it's a pack of dogs and huskies howling and barking at the simplest noise. And it's a little bit irritating just because chickens are such a big opportunity for kids to learn. I had over 100 back in Louisiana, and my kids loved watching them hatch. They loved having the fact that we can go out and collect our own fresh eggs every morning and knowing exactly what's going into our chickens, exactly how they're raised. It was such a learning opportunity. And it's so important that even if we're in city limits, we still get to have that self-sufficient feeling. And as far as the salmonella, there's been salmonella found on cantaloupes and lettuce. Same thing with listeria outbreaks. It's from produce. So it doesn't seem like it would outweigh the benefits to me. And I know that there's a very stringent process that we're proposing for permits. But I have noticed there's more difficulties that I've noticed with neighborhood dogs and cats than I've experienced myself with chickens. And those seem to just be allowed to run loose. They're very, very noisy. People aren't cleaning up after their dogs as much. As was mentioned, we've seen pretty rundown dog houses and furniture. I have a couple of neighbors who have this issue. But just as much as keeping our yard in check that should be required, there's no reason why we can't do the same for live animals that we should be responsible for and taking care of.
Thank you. Thank you. Great, the next one is Shannon. I'm not gonna say your last name right.
Jevney.
What she said. So
Yeah.
That's the last name, what she said. I'm still not gonna say it right.
That's all right. Yeah, Shannon Jevney. I am a Warren County born and raised. Showed in 4-H, lived outside of St. Mary's. After that, my husband and I met in at UNI, and I was able to pull him back to central Iowa because he's from Decorah, but we got that worked out. Now that we are in Indianola, growing up on a farm myself, I would love to have my kids to have the opportunity to get to have a little bit of livestock. And I know that chickens are scary because we're not used to that in Indianola. It's something different, but I think that chickens are a lot less noisy than dogs. I have heard dogs barking in the night, other noise distractions, fireworks that we all love for the most part. So to me, I think obviously if there's regulations, I think that would be great. Obviously no roosters. Someone mentioned, well, what will we do with the roosters? Well, we live in Warren County. There's lots of farms, including my brother-in-law has one outside of St. Mary's, and they can take a rooster or two here and there. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of people around Warren County that have farms that would be willing to take a rooster off of our hands. Or like we said, ARL is working through that. So another thing is I'm a nurse. I've been in pediatrics for 3 years in downtown Des Moines Clinic. I have never seen one of our patients have salmonella or have bird flu. COVID, yes. Influenza, yes. Cuts and bites from dogs, yes. But never salmonella or bird flu. So that's one thing I did want to let you guys know. And then another thing, waste management. Well, I'm just curious, what's the waste management for dogs? Like, where is the dog's waste management going? And I'm sorry, but some people have some pretty big dogs with a lot of waste coming from them. So what do we do with that? That's just another question I had. But overall, I am for chickens. I think it'd be a great learning opportunity. Be great for people to be able to raise their own food in town, and kids to get to see that happen. So thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? All right, you can come forward if you would state your name and address, since we don't have a form that would be helpful.
Jane Kolachecki, 12461 G58 Highway, Indianola. I live out in rural Warren County. I wasn't planning on speaking about chickens. I came on a different issue, but I'm formerly director of the Iowa Department of Public Health, and I wrote the national response plan to avian influenza for the USDA and the Department of Homeland Security. So I have a little bit of background in this, and the one thing that hasn't been brought up is the potential impact on Iowa agricultural industry. And let me first say that I really want to support backyard birding. I think children raising chickens is a really important opportunity for kids, and I think it's really great for them to have that opportunity. The thing I haven't heard in all of this discussion today, though, is the key to disease prevention and mitigation is education. And I really want to see incorporated into the ordinance here, education in avian influenza. We have 56 million layers in this state, raising over 1 billion eggs per month. It's about a $3 billion agricultural industry. We are #1 in egg production in the country, and mitigation of AI is really critical. And I think the key here is just making sure that your ordinance has a component where now the folks who've been raising birds for a long time understand the importance of all this. But as new people enter the backyard birding opportunities that come as a result of this ordinance, I would really like to see them take some of the Iowa State University extension courses to understand how to mitigate avian influenza between their flocks and wild birds, to be able to control those diseases, including salmonella. That would include all disease mitigation. And I would like to see that added, just to make sure that we've got that step involved in the process in protecting Iowa's egg industry. It's a very important portion of our economy in this state, and I think we really need to keep that as part of the educational component of this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, okay. You want to go ahead? I don't care. Just give us your first name and last name.
Sure. Emily Roush.
And address,
Bowles.
I'm sorry.
Sure. Emily Roush Bowles, 604 West Boston Avenue. I also was not going to speak, but I wanted to address the issue of waste. I own April Sky Flower Farm here in town. It's a very small flower farm. within city limits. I've talked to city officials and do have permission to have this little flower farm. Many years ago, I also had 2 hens within the city limits before the first issue with the ordinance. I just wanted to say that I had compost from the chickens previously. I have compost pile now for just the waste from my garden. And then there's lots of people within town that also have composting with their waste. I just wanted to say that if education about waste is an issue, I would be more than happy to provide some education on composting. I'd be willing to work with like a local Boy Scout troop or the any type of the local organizations to create some education around composting that includes chicken compost.
Thank you.
My name's Tabitha McLean. I live at 313 North 17th Street. And no, I was not gonna talk either. I did email and express kind of my thoughts. And I keep thinking about the fact that back in the day, the government used to ask individuals and community members to have victory gardens and to have chickens. I think it's 2 chickens per person or something. So I kind of think that that's just part of our heritage. We live in Indianola and Warren County. I think it's important to be able to do that. Some people had talked about back in 2020 when, you know, it was hard to go to the grocery store. It was hard, not to mention yes, we're not gonna make a lot of money, but we'll be able to have eggs from the garden. And I just support the chickens in the city limits with the permits. I think as they talked about, it's not like there's gonna be thousands and thousands of people wanting to have chickens because it is costly and it does take a lot of work and people are gonna take care of their stuff. So I just support that, but thank you.
Thank you. All right, last call. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing? Jackie?
Councilmember Armstrong,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Beach,
Aye.
Ray,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Stones.
Aye.
All right, so we are back now out of the public hearing, and now is the appropriate time for council to discuss and ask questions of Kristen or Emily.
Some comments that I would make on the chickens. It's like Ron, I know you're like, well, what do we do? What would we do with the rooster? Somebody has a rooster. We acknowledge that they're here now illegally. So, I mean, I think that's being lost, right? That they're here illegally. And doing an ordinance. I don't think people want to do it illegally. I think they want to have legal backyard chickens, and giving them parameters in which to do it can help those loose chickens running around, you know, the streets of Indianola. And, you know, can give them those parameters to do that. I know some of the earlier concerns that were expressed on the survey were about, you know, the number of responses. So data is data, right? You can say, that's not an appropriate number of responses, this is. So I was just gonna throw this out. We did a housing study earlier this year. I was open for about 60 days, had about 100 responses. Okay, that's 1.7 responses per day. We did a comprehensive plan a couple years ago or so, had about 1,500 responses in 90 days. That's 16.7 responses per day. We had a chicken survey that was open for about 50 days. Had 1,125 responses for city limits. That's about 22.5 responses per day. Take that with however you want. Okay, I'm not gonna say those are the appropriate amount of responses, but I'm saying the response per day is higher than our comprehensive plan. That's all I'm gonna say about the numbers, because you guys can do whatever you want. You know, I've always been torn on it, and I think coming at it in a restrictive way at the beginning if we're going to do it, is probably the best approach. I don't think we wanna be in the position of Des Moines, where they're trying to scale back from 30. That seems a little bit crazy, right? I think this would make sense. I think this would make sense if we wanted to pursue backyard chickens, that we would start in a restrictive manner. It was brought up about landfill benefits. I think Melissa would agree with me here. When it comes to landfill, those cells are filling up quicker than expected. Now, I'm not saying backyard chickens are gonna solve that problem by any means. That would be absurd, but could it help? Because that's what we're looking at landfill right now, is the new facility with the new cells filling up much quicker than expected.
They're 2 years ahead of schedule right now, as far as filling up.
Yeah, so just in general, those are my thoughts that I have, on chickens, so I will pass the baton down to whoever else wants to talk.
I'll go ahead. So when we talked about this in April, I was opposed to it, and I gotta say, I'm still opposed to it, and my reason being is I had chickens, it doesn't just impact me, it impacts my neighbor to the north, it impacts my neighbor to the south, and my 3 to the east. So there's 5 other families that are impacted because I don't have a fence and there is no fencing requirement. So that's the reason I'm opposed to it.
I'm just asking this for the sake of conversation, not to like challenge at all, but could the same be said, for instance, with somebody's dog? It was very nice last weekend, hearing lots of dog barking, right? And it could kind of be, but.
We're not talking dogs, we're talking chickens right now, so, I mean, if we're talking.
And I
chickens,
respect your opinion on it 100%.
I just don't think, as me as being a good neighbor, I should impact my 5 surrounding neighbors who don't have fences as well. You know, we're kind of a little community. We go over and talk to each other and walk into people's backyards, and it is nice. I don't wanna wreck that with chickens.
I'll just say I had 14 emails today alone in favor of having chickens, and not a single email as of 5:40 or it was 4:45 when I closed down my email earlier, so not a single one opposed. In speaking with someone who lives currently in West Des Moines, they had a neighbor who had chickens for multiple years before they even knew they had chickens. And it was during the pandemic when they showed up at their house offering them eggs that they finally knew that their neighbor had chickens. So I understand where you're coming from, Ron, like not wanting to affect your neighbors, but
that sounds like a good neighbor.
I mean,
know they have chickens.
yeah, like they had
Sounds like a good
absolutely no
neighbor.
idea for 5+ years that their neighbor had chickens. So, to me, I think as long as people are being responsible, and the ordinance that we're putting forward is a pretty stringent ordinance. And I think when you compare that to other cities, the number of complaints that other cities have received, cities that are 2 and 3 times our size are having next to no complaints. So I understand some concern, but when you look at the overall number of cities that do allow it in comparison, I don't think we're gonna have the issues that a lot of people are anticipating. And I don't think we're gonna have as many people participating either. I think it's something that it takes time, it takes investment, it takes dedication to maintain. And the first year we may have an abundance of people who apply to do so. But the next year we may not have half, you know, because they've realized, hey, chickens aren't for me. So.
Or Steve, would either of you like to go?
I was gonna say something else I forgot. I also wanna thank Charlie and Emily for getting me Ward 3 results. Charlie got me Ward 3 results before the extension of the survey. So I wanted to call that out, that I appreciate that, so that I could look at other results and compare it to my ward. So my ward trended slightly above the city in terms of favorability. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Member Charleston.
Yes, thank you. I want to say a lot of thoughtful comments tonight from both staff, council, folks in the audience, and I apologize for not getting back to those folks that emailed me today. I did not have access to my emails until 5 o'clock or so, so I will respond to you sometime in the next day or so, and I apologize for that because that's one of my big things about making sure I respond to folks. Christina, thank you. I read this entire packet here and got a lot of good information out of it, and I appreciate all the information and the time you took to do that too. And those that wrote in as well, I appreciate all that information too. I want to start off in saying I'm not opposed to urban chickens. What I am right now concerned about, and hence some of my questions to staff, and again, I hope that didn't come off inappropriately, and I have moved my ticket a little bit, moved myself a little bit off of one side or the other. But what I will say is this: I have a couple of concerns. Generally, when you write legislation, and this is really what an ordinance is, it's legislation. We're legislating in the city of Indianola, and I don't like us not to have a fee schedule that we can look at. And the reason I say that is because I don't think it's fair to taxpayers in Indianola that don't necessarily want chicken to subsidize those that do have chickens, in the sense of having us pay the taxes to have staff to do that. I think Barb's comment about having maybe hiring, I think you said something about hiring additional folks. Not that that's going to happen, but the fact is that we don't have any idea right now what the actual cost is. I know we had a lot of time. I know we got 2 staff members here that put a lot of time into this situation, and looking and researching. I know Charlie did when he was still here as well. I don't think it's right that we don't have a fee schedule in this particular ordinance. I think we need to have a fee schedule. I think it needs to be clear. It has to be discussed and has to be put forward. So not only does the staff know what our fee schedule is in the council, but also the fact that people in the community know what the fee schedule is as well. I think we need a little tighter inspection process on this whole process. I think we need to be able to take a look at when we do inspect, and I know that's part of the process when you build a building, that you'll have an inspection and then the re-inspection is there. But I think the point was made, and I'm not sure exactly, sorry, who said that, but if we have a privacy fence, it's going to be hard to kind of see that if we don't have the right during certain complaints or X number of complaints to have an inspection on site. So the concern I have is the cost, the fee schedule, and inspection. And those are the 3 things. And so right now, without those being in an ordinance, I cannot support this ordinance as written.
Member Stones, would you like to go?
I would, thank you. So I was just looking back at all the emails, and I appreciate everyone who's reached out throughout the entire course of this and staff's time to put everything together. It's been really a good process, I feel, in terms of getting everything together, and really engaging the public. I looked through my emails and just did a quick look. 27 in favor, 8 opposed. It's my count. But I've had many conversations in person. A lot in favor, but lots of neutral. Not very many opposing in conversation. Those who oppose, I have a list of what the reasons were. And I guess I'm just gonna run down the list. And this is before the meeting tonight, because I just wanted to, in my mind, as we're heading into the vote tonight, I needed to just think about things. They were avian bird flu, and I did research on that. We found that last year there were 15 cases, and those were all from large flock operations, like I'm talking big commercial type operations. They didn't come from small coops or small backyard chickens like we're looking at. I needed to know that. Other things that were brought up were feather allergies, noise, and again, the rooster component plays into that. Odor and the keeping of the waste. And I think Kristen answered our question with that. Illness, and that goes into the salmonella discussion. Nuisance and how we address those and staff, and we talked about that earlier. And so I feel like we've kind of addressed those things throughout our discussion. So I'm really leaning, I've been kind of back and forth on this, I'll just be honest, but I think I have enough that I am in favor.
Councilmember Rabe, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Really I guess I would just commend staff and P&Z for what they've given us up to this point. I'm generally very supportive of the idea of this. My main concern right now is echoing what Councilmember Richardson said, is that I'm for fees, but and maybe staff can answer this. If it's not clear now, how do we add it? Like, what's the process for that, and how do we decide what those fees should be, so that we know when we're going into this that we're all going to be in agreement on that?
Generally, we haven't been putting fees in the ordinances. We've been taking them out, and then we just put them in the fee schedule that council approves annually. That way the ordinance is just cleaner. Anytime you want to amend the fee schedule, you can easily do that. You don't have to go through the 3 hearings and the publication requirements that are required in this type of ordinance.
Do we have an estimate on what this fee should be that's appropriate for when we add it to the fee schedule?
We don't, but we can collect that information from other cities and see what they are requiring as part of that permit.
Thanks, Emily. I mean, my question for clarity would be, like, is it an arbitrary number? Is our goal to Councilman Richardson's point to make sure citizens that aren't taking advantage of this subsidizing, right, the time that comes from our enforcement officers and from staff? Like, I'm just looking for some type of, are we charging $50 a year? Are we charging $500 a year? Like, where are we at?
Generally speaking, we would update the fee schedule at the 3rd reading, but part of that is we can provide more information during the 2nd reading that lets the council know what the other cities are charging. The reason we like to use other cities is because it gives us a gauge. They have the experience and they know what, often their people are in the field. And then, of course, we can adjust that annually as we go forward, as we get our own data collected on how much time we're in the field.
That's great. Thank you, Ben.
Anything else, Councilmember Rabe?
No, I think everyone has done a lovely job of asking questions and presenting perspectives. Thank you.
Perfect. Is there any other questions or comments here from council members? All right. Seeing none. We have a motion on the floor. Did I get a motion yet on that? We just went right into discussion, didn't we? All right. Okay, so seeing that, can I get a first and second motion on the first consideration of an ordinance amending the city code of the city of Indianola, Iowa by adding regulations for the keeping of urban chickens within the city limits?
So moved.
Thank you. Jackie?
Councilmember Rabe?
Aye.
Dolby?
No.
Stones?
Aye.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Richardson?
No.
Beach? Aye.
Right, motion passes 4-2. Moving on to item 3, which is chapter 165.03, amendment for building design alternatives. Can I guess if we'll let our guests, if they want to leave before it gets super loud.
Second reading on this is when again?
September 3rd or 4th.
September 3rd.
Thank you all for coming this evening.
Thank you.
See, that's true friendship right there. Different
What's that?
opinions, but you still love each other. True friendship right there, right?
Oh, yeah. As long as he doesn't hit me on the way out.
Joe, well.
Now, if you would have won, I would
Yes, we did it. See you guys.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to open the public hearing regarding an ordinance amending chapter 165.09 titled Building Design Standards for the addition of building design alternatives? Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah, that's one double points, maybe. Is it a veteran and a
Councilmember Ray?
I was enjoying.
Aye, sorry, it's hard to hear.
Yeah, I know. Dolby?
Aye.
Stones?
Aye.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're now in the public hearing and I will turn it over to staff. Emily.
So this is a proposed code update to potentially allow for flexibility and grant relief from strict compliance with building design requirements that are outlined in chapter 16509. That's titled Building Design Standards as part of the site plan review process. The intent of the ordinance is to maximize aesthetics and the diversity of building design within the city of Indianola while remaining consistent with the general intent and purpose of the zoning code, comprehensive plan, and any other applicable long-term and comprehensive vision plans. So the code does show 4 different design alternatives that could be considered by planning and zoning and city council. I will. Very different, I think.
Sorry.
But
It's kind of funny. It's like a parent telling me, don't touch.
the first one is design alternatives to any numerical regulation that's established in 165.097 when the design alternative does not exceed a reduction of more than 50%. So this is essentially calling out to those class 1, 2, 3, or 4 materials. Design alternative to numerical regulations established in 165.097 when the design alternative does not exceed an increase of more than 50% to a maximum building design requirement. This essentially just talks to your wall length. So for certain buildings, they can't have a flat wall of 60 feet. I believe it's for one of the building types. So essentially just says that they could increase that up to 50% in a approved design alternative, just no more than that. And then the last one is design alternatives to the requirement of permanent materials for collection containers, so trash enclosures. When the siting of the collection container is not visible from the public street or residentially developed or zoned properties, and when the collection container consists of no more than 2 totes. So if they have dumpsters, they will need to have permanent materials. Likely those are going to be your dumpsters that have food waste or larger amounts of waste. Moving on to procedure for review. This generally outlines that procedure. The first step would be for staff to review the request during the site planning process. Any required submittal documents, including a written narrative, proposed design alternative that they want to have considered, and then just showing that it's consistent with the proposed ordinance. The next step would be to take that to the Planning and Zoning Commission with the site plan. So there would be 2 motions that would have to be considered. The first would be on the site plan itself, the second on the design alternative. So 2 separate votes there, and then the same with City Council for the final decision, review and decision. When deliberating the request, there are 4 items that could be considered. The first is consistency and compatibility with the future land use map, comprehensive plan, and any other adopted or applicable long-term planning policies. So that would include our comp plan, the 6th Street sub-area plan, downtown square design guidelines, et cetera. The second is surrounding land uses, building sizes, architectural style, building types and function, building placement, orientation, and setbacks. This is just really to ensure that the proposed design alternative is context appropriate. So for example, if you have proposed design alternatives in the downtown area that want to minimize the clear glass requirement on the first floor, that might not be context appropriate for a downtown commercial area, but it could work in a commercial highway corridor area that's not as visible from the highway. So that's what that is looking at. The third is the general relationship to and impact on the surrounding area and neighboring properties. And then the last one is provisions to decrease or minimize architectural impact, such as the implementation of additional landscaping or screening, exceeding minimum required class 1 or class 2 building materials on primary facades, or exceeding minimum glass requirements to the primary facades. With that, the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the request. And if there's any questions for staff, we would be happy to answer.
Questions?
So trying to understand this when I was reading it through the packet the other day. So are we basically allowing a developer to come in and say, hey, I really don't like your building codes, therefore I'm changing my plan up to 50% because I can't?
It would have to be reviewed in a separate motion, but they could submit a request for a design alternative, but based off of the context, you have to review and see if it would be appropriate for that site or not. Maybe to give a better example of one that we've had recently is the Starbucks site plan, where they do have multiple street frontages, but their main customer entrance is from that south end. And then on the west end, they have the drive-through. Well, the minimum required glass for that site didn't, and they did submit for a variance request, but it didn't quite meet that requirement. So they had to go through that variance process instead for that, even though that wall isn't really the main attraction into the building. And it doesn't quite work with the interior layout of the building or what they have going on there with the drive-through too. So this is just to provide some sort of flexibility in those kinds of instances. But ultimately that decision does fall on P&Z and City Council on what that recommendation is from P&Z, and then your final decision here.
Did all this come about because of the public comment from Jay Clark? Is that kind of what spurred all of this?
No, this was a process well before. Okay.
But I do appreciate the trash can, the receptacles, since he wasn't, I think that is something Ben and I, when we sat down with Jay Clark, something we could really walk through. He didn't need a dumpster, so there wasn't the need to spend $10,000 on an enclosure. He can bring his receptacle inside because it's just paper. But no, that was under, I believe they were working on that before.
Yeah, and Charlie and I, like before this ordinance, we've talked about it prior, like something similar, except way more complicated than what we have. But we had, because we've had inquiries from developers before.
Another good example would be Champion Car Wash. They were supposed to have so much glass on that building, but because of what they do, the temperatures in there, and I believe they applied for a variance, and then got that approved so that they could build that building. And it doesn't really meet our glass requirements, but in the line of business they were in, it wasn't gonna serve it well either, I think.
So if we had the variant process, why are we going through the process of changing our code if they can just go through the variance process?
Variances are complicated because you're giving property rights versus, in this instance, you're waiving from the requirement. So if you're giving a variance, right, like you have to go through the 4 findings of fact to determine whether or not you can grant that. But if you're saying one property can do it, one can't,
It would be high, it's hard to get a variance because you're supposed to show that there's a hardship not of your own making. Most of these, it's not, you know, it's, you just want a different design. So if you're really gonna, we always struggle with variances because the standard's really supposed to be high and they're not supposed to be used regularly. It's supposed to be an extraordinary situation. So that's why you do something like this, because it gives more flexibility and a little more leeway. But really no variance. It's hard to get variance.
Always a struggle when you're trying to be warm and welcoming to businesses, but you also want to maintain a high standard and have flexibility. So that's always that weight in that decision process.
This would have been something like Cabin Coffee when they did theirs. I remember they had to go through a process too because of the design. And I guess this is like one of those examples because it's like
before my time. So
I know.
I think
It was cabin design.
Drive-through was so close to the business next door is what they went through.
Well, they had the cabin design issue too. You know the name.
I think this just overall makes it easier for businesses to come to us and essentially build here, right? I mean, without having to go through a lengthy variance process.
You want to hold high standards, but you also want some flexibility.
Nothing in this proposed ordinance that would be in conflict with the past final siting bill, which not only included vinyl siding, but also included a number of other things as well by the state legislature. So are we compatible with that, with this ordinance? Because they did put some restrictions on certain design standards.
Or residential buildings, is that what you're referring to?
No, they went to commercial too on, well, what they did was anything 12 units or less, and in residential, they said it's not a commercial, well, it's commercial, but you can't put anything but vinyl siding on it essentially, or you have alternative methods. But my concern is here that there's everything in here. One of the things that I took to the intent of that legislation was to remove some of the local ordinances abilities to control what they did on certain buildings. And so I just want to make sure we're not in conflict with that legislation that was recently passed by the legislature and signed by the governor.
I know that Charlie was aware of that legislation when this was completed and developed. And so I can certainly reach out, we can reach out and also compare it to the state legislation, make sure that we're in compliance. Obviously, it would be more in harmony with if the intent of the state legislation is to prohibit cities from
lower restrictions, yeah. And I get it, I just, you know where I'm at, I just don't want to be in conflict. I don't want to pass something, all of a sudden, we pass something we're not supposed to, so that's all I'm saying.
I thought it was just residential, but it is commercial too.
Well, so when they moved to the 12-unit apartment buildings from commercial to residential in some areas, but you still, so if you are a commercial front, for instance, what happened, and I'm getting off track here, but the point is that, let's say for instance that we have somebody that wants to build commercial below and residential above, and it's less 12 units or less, we can't control what goes on the upper floors of that particular building. And so I just want to make sure that we're not, if my understanding of that bill is correct, I just want to make sure that we're not in conflict with that.
So on the code, I don't believe it would be, just with the glass requirements that pertains mostly to the first level, that would be your commercial. But then going back on the other item that you could theoretically submit like a design alternative to would be the length of the building without having that wall plane interruption. That's not covered in that ordinance.
Well, my only concern, I have a couple of concerns, just the fact we're not, if we are in compliance, but so what really confounded me on that particular piece of legislation was that even though you may be in an area zone C1 or C2 along our main highway corridor, we lost the ability to control what goes on in the upper floors up there. So that's kind of my concern, especially if it's residential above and commercial below, but it's still in a commercial zone. Does that make any sense to you? So if let's say for instance, in one of the new developments north of town, they want to put in a strip mall, but have 12 or 8 units above it to rent. We've lost some of the ability to control what goes on the upper floors of that particular building. And so I just want to make sure we're not in conflict with that. That's where I'm coming from.
You can certainly research that, but clearly,
It does mention that there's an exception to
Where
the
that-
buildings under applicability.
Yeah, I think we've thrown that into everything here, though. Is that
I
right?
mean, it talks about the downtown mixed use zoning
And the
district.
special
main
overlay,
units.
yeah, special overlays are not required, and so are the PUDs, right? But again, if we have something that would go in on a typical C1 or C2 commercial lot and you end up with some, and maybe even C3 in the case, but you may have some residential above, then I just want to make sure we're okay. That's where I'm going from.
We'll have staff review that with legal and just make sure it all lines up.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Why 50%? I understand the point of this versus the variance process, but why 50% instead of 25%?
I think we could consider 25%. The 50% just came from when we were doing our research with what Des Moines was doing with their design alternatives. They had like a minimum percentage that you could increase or decrease on specific code sections. But we can certainly look at lowering that as well.
Would that have to be through P and Z? I'm sorry, Josh.
No, that's a great question if it has to go back to P&Z, but my question is if we've had few instances where this would be helpful and they've been minor instances up to this point, why are we going so far with 50% as opposed to, what research went into a different acceptable number? So we're being open, but we're not being too open.
Going back to the case that we did have with the Starbucks and just recalling from that review, I do believe that if they had gone through this process, the glass requirement or the amount of glass that they had was either 9 or 10%. So they would have needed, if under this instance, it would have to be like 50%, but it could be considered as 25%.
So with the Starbucks one, saying that because of all of the design changes or requirements, it would have
Yeah,
met
like
that
the variance
50%. Which I imagine that's probably not hard to do when you're looking at designing a drive-through or car wash.
Any other questions or thoughts? Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
Moved.
Second. Jackie.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yeah, it's closing the public hearing, correct?
Yes.
Aye.
Rabe?
Aye.
Dolby?
Aye.
Stones?
Aye.
Armstrong?
Aye.
All right, can I get first and second?
I was just gonna ask, do we want to send this back to P and Z and talk about that issue of 30 to 50%? And also to make sure that it's legal? Or
Do we need a
continue this
motion first
until?
for conversation or not? Because if we're gonna.
Well, we're gonna make a motion to continue.
the motion, you can make the motion.
I guess I'd like some feedback from the rest of the council. I don't want to do it if the rest of the council's not in favor of that, so.
I don't really see a need to do that.
Councilmember Rabe, do you have a thought on sending it back and changing the number?
I don't know. I am struggling to wrap my head around it at the moment. Starbucks is a very specific user in the retail world with one of the most specific design standards available. And you're talking about an end cap drive-through, which is the not the normal for projects that we're going to have in the way that that's laid out. So in some aspects, it's the minimum. The minimal one, you're not going to see it very often. But if staff is telling me that it has to be 50%, then I don't feel the need to muddy the waters over that number if they're saying that's absolutely what it needs to be.
Anybody over here have a thought?
I'm gonna make a motion to continue. If nobody wants a second, that's fine. I just think maybe it gives staff time to check out a couple of things and get some clarity on that, but I'll make a motion to continue until next meeting.
Is there a second? All right, seeing no second, we'll go back and can I get a first and second motion on the first consideration of an ordinance amending chapter 16509 titled Building Design Standards for the addition of building design alternatives. Any other discussion? Jackie?
Councilmember Ray,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Stones,
Aye.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Deep.
Aye.
We have staff make sure we get that information for the next meeting then.
Thank you. Moving on to new business. Can I get a first and second motion on the resolution approving a plat of survey request for the Voldemars plats for the part of First Street right of way lying east and adjacent to lots 1 and 2, block F in the Fair Acres original plat.
Second.
Thank you. Definitely. This you? This you, right?
So House has submitted a plat of survey request on behalf of Civic for a plat of survey or for a parcel that is mentioned on the screen and is located within the Fair Acres subdivision. So the result in parcel B, a 0.17 acre lot. The replatting is proposed, or the platting is proposed for future redevelopment and replatting of ground. So this shows that proposed plat of survey. The split, as I mentioned, was for that redevelopment, replatting. It's an unusual lot. It is in the shape of a fork, but they're carving out an area between some existing lots, so lot 1, 2, 15, and 16 on that existing subdivision. New one to essentially round it out and then make that southern portion able to be redeveloped into a new subdivision. So the left shows the future land use map, which guides for this area as regional mixed use. The right shows the current zoning. Majority of the area is zoned for A1 agricultural. The area that is considered the subject area for the plat of survey is zoned for the C2 highway commercial zoning district.
Emily, just, I'm trying to wrap my head around exactly where this is on that plat. Is this and this is the Emerald Bay, I mean, this is the Emerald Bay area, I assume?
The blue, the planned unit development to the south, that's the Emerald Bay. And then that red area is the Indianola Veterinary Clinic.
Okay.
And it's just north of that.
Okay. I see where we are. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't help that it's not addressed, but.
Right, well, I just was trying to wrap my head around exactly where this was.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it now.
With that, P&Z is recommending of the report.
So I'm gonna be vulnerable here. I really have no idea what they're asking for here, to be honest with you. I mean, I can see that parcel, but they're trying to do what with it?
They are replatting it, so I'll just, I'll pull up this one. So the yellow area is where that subject area is. So they're essentially cutting it off at that property line with the adjacent ones to make that southern area redevelopable to bring back a new subdivision request for that area. The area north of that subject area wouldn't be considered just because there are a number of different property owners within that subdivision, unfortunately, that it just complicates, like, to go back, they had looked at purchasing a number of these lots to replat it, so that way you actually have developable residential lots rather than lots that were supposed to have dedicated city streets that don't have that. It was final platted without those streets being implemented and then dedicated over to the city. So they're cleaning up one boundary of this long tuning fork, and then everything south of there, they're going to submit a new subdivision plat for that area.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, this was part of the Fair Acres plat done in the 1950s, is that correct? And so all these streets were laid out and nothing's there, it's just farm ground right now, Ron.
So that, what's highlighted in the turquoise, it was supposed to be streets?
Those are all that you see there were streets and very tiny lots to build homes on in the 1950s, is what they were gonna do.
So they're just doing away with what was gonna be the streets?
That one little yellow spot right there is all we're doing.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, Ron. No,
Totally lost.
I had to get my head around it too.
So is what we're proposing, is it this parcel or is it the parcel that's within the? It's just the yellow.
It's the yellow.
And what is this?
That is the existing lot.
That's the plat as it originally sits. There's still a plat there. It's just farm ground right now. Nobody's
just the
built
yellow.
anything.
So
They,
We're not doing
Unfortunately-
anything with the turquoise.
It's splitting off from it.
It's splitting off.
From that, because that is the overall parcel. Unfortunately, this was final platted years ago without public improvements being in there, and everyone who bought property years ago are landlocked because they really don't have the ability to go on city streets to have access to their developable properties. And so in an effort to try to clean this up, this just breaks off that first little section to try to plat that. The rest of it's gonna have to be cleaned up at some point.
that's what I had to wrap my head around too, is where this was exactly, because I was trying to think it was south of the veterinary clinic, and it's not, it's north. Okay, I got you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Rabe, any questions?
No.
Okay, no more questions then? All right, Jackie?
Councilmember Rabe,
Aye.
Dolby,
Aye.
Stones,
Aye.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Beach. Aye.
All right, our next item on the agenda is council consideration for financial participation in the DMMO facilities analysis. And I will hand it over to City Manager Ben Reeves.
Sure, of course, we are super supportive of the Des Moines Metro Opera, and last year there was some discussion with regard to their constraints that they have and the existing facilities that they enjoy over on Centene campus at the Blank Performing Arts Theater. Part of their determination on their future and where they were planning to continue to either stay here or go into other facilities, they did a study, they did surveys with the community and all that type of thing. And ultimately, it is in their best interest to stay within our community, and we couldn't be more pleased with that determination. But as part of that process, they do need to enhance that facility. And so they, along with Simpson College, have gone forward with a facility study to determine how best to expand or remodel that facility. And at that time, they were discussing with us to see if our entity as well as other entities would be willing to participate. The ask or the request was for $25,000, but it was more informal at that time. And this is now the formal request of the council to participate. Because it was unknown what that study would cost, and because we were still high level in our budget planning at that time, as we were going through the hotel motel tax dollar allocation, we had set aside $10,000 for the DMMO, like we have our other venues and events. But we also set aside $15,000 for the council to consider for one-time use, for a one-time project that had not yet been allocated, that could be allocated to this or could be allocated to other uses. But we sort of intentionally set that aside, not knowing if the study was gonna be moving forward and how much it potentially would cost. Simpson College and the DMMO are requesting that $25,000 to help in participating. They are also reaching out to, like I said, other entities as well to see if they can offset their costs. Our money will come off the top, and whatever is left over would be split by those two entities to move forward. And so this is our opportunity to help support and retain a wonderful asset to our community that brings millions and millions of dollars into our community each and every year. So that's before you for your consideration.
So is it okay for me to?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if there's any questions. Perfect.
So I am all for supporting the MMO, but I have concerns with not opening, because that 15,000 was set aside for one-time projects and we haven't opened it for any other applicants. And so I do have an issue with that. I also, we have a lot of projects and things going on right now. I find it hard to say, yeah, here's $15,000.
So two things to consider is that we did away with applicant processes altogether. And that we have stuck with the pillars of what are those entities that are bringing in people that, organizations that bring people to our community and actually create the hotel motel tax. And so we had been advised by our auditors to ensure that there's always an economic development purpose in every allocation of hotel motel tax dollars. And so many of the applicants of the past were for things that were very positive and beneficial to 501c3 type uses, but weren't actually generating the hotel motel tax benefit. And so our pillars, of course, are the balloons, the National Balloon Classic and the fair and the DMMO and our downtown commitment now converting into a Main Street commitment as well. Those are the pillars of what people bring people either, through Wine Witches and Brews or other events on the square and the other various venues.
But what about situation, like the Balloon Museum burnt down? I mean, maybe they planned on requesting funds for, and I'm simply hypothetically here. I have no idea if they ever planned on asking,
That's
but
separate from the classic. They're
That
two
is separate
separate
from the
things.
classic, and they actually don't receive funds now.
Yeah, so they don't, it's kind of, they're two separate entities. I know it gets confusing. I get confused too.
so, but, I mean, it is a museum, so that does meet economic impact, right? I mean.
Well, I know that the DMMO completed an economic study. And that was highlighted and shared with us of the number of visitors that they bring in each year, the hotel revenue and the restaurant revenue and all that. And I know that it was such a successful study that the National Balloon Classic went to the same organization because they had all the demographic information and they completed their economic study. So the benefits of how many hotel traffic that National Balloon Classic brings into our community as well. And so those are the type of things that are proven, demonstratable, tangible dollars that we can see where our investment of hotel motel taxes, which are generated from those visitors, go to benefit and expand that overall use. Of course, with the fair this year, we're wanting to make sure that the venue is safe and making it so it's beneficial going forward. And so that's our angle on that. This is just our opportunity to really work with our partners at Simpson and the DMMO to help better understand what it's going to take to expand out the performing arts theater, both for the benefit of the college and the DMMO.
Christine, if I may, I don't disagree with your point, but I think if we're looking at what is our return on investment, if I remember that financial report, I think DMMO was probably the #1 return on investment. It would be close between them and the National Balloon Classic. but it was significant. I mean, it was for every dollar, we get like 10 or 12 or something back, if I remember the numbers correctly, and.
And that study has been made available. I can certainly get that forwarded to all of you again, so that you can review and refresh, but it is a significant return. And I know it was of great concern last year, as I know that other universities are courting and petitioning, and we're so glad to see them taking on this study and planting their roots here for another 50 years to come.
Any questions? I don't know if we gave you direction. Do you feel like you have?
I actually need a motion and
Okay.
direction.
So if somebody wants to make a motion either way.
Make a motion that we approve the $25,000 for DM.
The $15,000 increase and make it a
15,000 total, 25. Okay.
Second it?
Any other questions? Jackie?
Councilmember Beach,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Dolby,
Aye.
Sones,
Aye.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
I do, when I did talk to Jay Byers about this, he thought that this is such a great support and a great partnering event that they would love to make that a very public presentation from the city to them, if you are interested in doing that, just to lend one more time publicly Simpson support and our support to the opera.
And welcome back, Jay Byers, something I missed,
It was
didn't I?
so good to see him.
It is
So
very
good to
good
see
to
him
see
back.
him back on campus. So welcome back, Jay. You have been missed and we are happy you're doing well.
Did you get direction on that? Is that a?
Yes, you passed the motion.
No, I know, but I mean,
Oh,
the
on a
second part of
public
the
event,
thing.
yeah, we'll set it up and those who can make it.
Moving on to other business, city managers report with Ben Reeves.
Oh, it is, it's been a few weeks and a lot of twists and turns in taking our community forward. And we certainly want to extend our appreciation to the Mayor's Council, who very thoughtfully looked at all of the facility needs within our community and really are setting a tone and a direction that is going to help us to lay a foundation. We're formulating and fleshing this out, but right now we're calling it Vision 2030. That will help address the facility needs of every single one of our departments. With that said, we know that some departments are being asked to be patient and to work with the city as we move forward with a holistic plan that's financially affordable and fiscally responsible to the residents. And so we're so very thankful, especially to our police officers and to our administration and community development staff who are being asked to be patient as we take care of some of the prerequisite or obstacles that are in the path to making our overall facility needs more digestible and financially affordable by taking care of some of those items that are new and on the horizon on a one-off basis. So thanks to everybody involved. I've been spending lots of time with lots of employees, fielding lots of questions, and I just want to say thank you to all of our staff and especially to our elected leaders to help us take a course forward. I also want to extend a great appreciation to all the staff and to the chamber and to the IDM and to our council and all the efforts that have gone into the Main Street designation that took place, and the work is yet ahead. And so we see a lot of effort coming forward. We want to support the new Main Street Indianola board as they pick their new executive director and as they chart their course moving forward. We want to be a great partner to them. That's probably the major things that I wanted to accomplish. I'm happy to answer any questions. This is audit week for us as well, so our auditors are in the South Conference room. So a lot of us will be working with the auditors, and so just want you to be aware of that.
For the good of the council, could I say one thing there?
Absolutely.
I think I know I sent all of you the some of the goals and stuff for Ben's goal setting that we need to fit. So if you kind of take a look at those and maybe get some information, to me, and I'm gonna share with Melissa so she can kind of tweak those a little bit. Like to bring Ben back whenever he's ready for a closed session and let him review those as well after we go through those too, so.
Do you think September 3rd is an appropriate time for us?
That's up to him if whenever he wants it, so.
You can whip me into shape anytime you.
Let's tentatively plan for that and we'll talk about it if we're ready, September 3rd and.
All good.
Right, well, what we have learned is that Ben excels under pressure and chaos is one of his specialties, so.
Not my health or my marriage.
No.
Everything else, but everything else we're good.
Pure chaos, you shine bright.
Let's just say my wife is really enjoying 3 weeks with grandkids.
Oh, I
and
bet.
being away with husband at this time.
Okay, so can I get a first and second motion to enter into closed session in accordance with Iowa Code Section 21.51J to discuss the purchase or sale of particular real estate only where premature disclosure could be reasonably expected to increase the price the governmental body would have to pay for that property or reduce the price the governmental body would receive for that property. Jackie.
Member Ray,
Aye.
Selby,
Aye.
Stones,
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Aye.
Can I keep Councilman?
No, we'll call him on this. Well, we'll
Can
just
I keep Councilman Rabe so I can project? Can we shut YouTube and still keep the virtual or no? Or set up a new one real quick? I'll just set up a new one.
I'll do another one off that.
All right, well, we'll take a quick like 2-3 minute break. So Jason's been getting his work in today.
I'll just expect the new link here just a second.
Sounds good.
So where'd you guys, you went to Ozarks, right?
No.